How do you do? This is Trixie the Golden Witch, ranting, raving, Ota Queen, and Mother of Anitube, and you're watching another episode of Yig Studios Vlogust, where I put out a new video every single day all month, because I turned 31 this month, and there happens to be 31 days in August, wouldn't you know it? At the very end of the month, there's going to be an exciting announcement! Whoa! Holy shit! It's gonna blow your mind into pieces, and you're gonna be like, what? How is that even fucking possible? I didn't even know such a thing could happen. But then it did. You'll be like, shit. So as you may know, I have recently caught up with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I have been uniquely excited about its current phase as somebody who got into it because of the newer shows like Moon Knight and Loki, and then sort of worked my way back and fleshed out all the characters and the setting to my own understanding by watching the rest of it. And as I see other people talk about Phase 4, there's been a lot of complaining. People have been really down on the MCU. I think it probably started with the combination of Black Widow and Eternals, and I'll get into that in just a moment, and how I feel about those movies. But I don't blame people if they maybe feel like it became too much to keep track of, or maybe like, you know, you don't want to have to watch a movie you don't think is going to be really to your liking, or like a character you don't care about already, just to understand the continuing narrative of this mega series. But personally, I am only invested in it as a mega series. I want it to be as complicated and to involve as much stuff as possible, because that's what has kept it entertaining for me, is the fact that it is getting to a point where it is capable of telling stories that are insanely sci-fi complicated, because of the fact that the universe now has space for that, because of how deep we've gotten into this story, that characters can be facing consequences and circumstances way beyond what a normal person would ever have thought about. And while I am intrigued by all of that, I also think that it's just been good and maintained a certain consistency in having strong themes and strong characterization and a strong overarching sense. And that seems to be what a lot of people are missing, who maybe are only seeing bits and pieces of Phase 4, is what the overarching theme is. And to me, it's clearer than ever. It's found family and love. It's become a story about finding loved ones, finding people you can connect with, building families, building relationships, and trying to maintain them. And I think that the very nature of how these movies have been created over the last decade and a half has lent itself to these themes. I really do think that a large part of the Avengers initiative as a film franchise was really about avenging film as an industry. We were in the middle of this burgeoning Me Too movement, this point in time where people were sick and tired of the fact that powerful people like Harvey Weinstein in the industry had all this power and influence over people's careers, over who was going to be successful, and they wanted to build a power structure outside of that. And I think that maybe they weren't so like high-minded in their ambitions when they started, but as they built this empire, it really did become something where they have to have relationships with people for as long as this thing is possible to continue. If this thing stays popular enough that they can keep making MCU content long into the future, and it stays profitable enough to keep all the big stars that they have involved, then, you know, that's something that all of those people can continue doing for as long as they feel like they want to be a millionaire who dresses up in cool outfits and is beloved by everyone on Earth. Doing the research that I did on the production of Thor: Love and Thunder so that I could make my critical drinker response video, we'll call it, that taught me a lot about the mentality behind the people making these movies, where they had employed all of their own children on the film, like a lot of wives and brothers and sisters, and like everybody who was related to the core cast of people who was needed and necessary for the film to work. Basically, Taika Waititi and Chris Hemsworth, like they were the main like creative voices behind producing and directing the film. And so it's basically, what can they do to bring all of their friends and family along with them and be able to live their life more comfortably and responsibly while making movies? Because ordinarily this is something that takes a father away from his daughter for 6 months out of the year, going down to New Zealand to film a bunch of pretend bullshit, to sell toys to other kids, and like all of that, I have to imagine, weighs heavily on the minds of the people making these things, where they really want to, be there for their own kids and stuff like that while making movies. And so they've started making these movies about having families so they can have families about it. And a lot of that is also found family, in the fact that these people met through these movies and then have to have these long-term relationships with one another over their appearances in these movies. And I definitely think that there's some sort of culture around these Marvel films that people have to be able to fit into. It's not just hiring like the hottest actors necessarily, it's like who fits into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it started getting me really interested and curious about people who find themselves in other cinematic universes, where you look at the DC universe and the two most controversial celebrities of the year, Ezra Miller and Amber Heard, were both in these major DC pictures. Neither one of them is in any Marvel pictures, and it makes me wonder if like Marvel would have seen these people as problematic and just not wanted them involved. Marvel is obviously dedicated to being woke, to being globalist. They want everyone in the world to care about their property and for it to be something they can do forever. So, the more people it can appeal to, the better. And I find that really interesting. I think it's great that they end up bringing all these diverse voices in and just kind of filtering them through the Marvel pipeline and seeing what that gives us back to the world. Getting into some specific films, the very first one in Marvel Phase 4 was Black Widow, and the only way it makes sense at all that Black Widow came out after Endgame, it really doesn't make sense, but the one way it makes sense is that it really established this found family theme. The main thrust of the film is about how there had been a fake family that Black Widow belonged to, along with her sister Yelena and their two fake parents, and they had a kind of idyllic upbringing for a little while, before it became that they ended up being trained to be child soldiers and the rest of their life was kind of a living hell. But they always had this memory of this time when they had something resembling a family, and they end up kind of coming back together and trying to figure out if it meant anything, what it means to each of them and stuff like that, as they sort through what level of family they're willing to have or think that they actually need. There's a sense that it's the story of the desire to have a family. Why does that matter? Why does that arise in a person, and what can you do about it? If there is no one who really resembles an actual family in your life, is it worth it to cling on to the closest thing you've got, the most familiar thing? And seeing the different ways that Yelena and her sister react to that is really fun. I haven't finished the Falcon and the Winter Soldier TV show, but I was fascinated that it immediately starts establishing the Falcon's family. Like, we go right, I keep wanting to call him Captain Falcon because he's like Captain America, but also the Falcon. But Captain Falcon goes home, we meet his sister, we learn about his family business, and we also have Bucky as a character who is so displaced in time and space, and now even from his only friend, who was Captain America, who he only even had minimal contact with, and still that guy's gone now. So it's about him trying to become friends with the other guy that Captain America vouched for on the same level as him, so it's like the two of them, even though they don't naturally gel, forming a relationship out of their mutual respect for another guy that they both loved. And, Bucky is somebody who basically has been found by Wakanda. He has a community entirely out of being somebody that is respected enough by certain people that they will allow him to live there. But he, again, is a character who is far from having really a natural family. And that also brings us to Shang-Chi, whose dad is a fucking centuries old being called the Mandarin, who is the ultimate crime lord of all time and has supernatural powers beyond reason. And like, you know, Shang-Chi had like a period of like a kind of a normal life, a total disruption from that, where he had to be trained to be, again, like kind of a child soldier, and then has to deal with like the involvement of his father still being around, still being like the ultimate evil. And can he do something about that? And how can he like participate in regular friendships and regular relationships, like without getting people put into danger for the fact that his past is so fucked, who his dad is, who he is. The Eternals is not a great film. I understand why this movie might have broken a lot of Marvel fans, because it simultaneously introduces a ton of lore and is also a totally confusing mess. I think it needs to be re-edited. I think you could make like a 90-minute version of this movie that would make more sense and be more exciting. It feels like it was mostly an excuse to pump a bunch of actors into the MCU that like wanted to be there. And it has some of these found family themes in that these characters have existed for a long time and they have at different points had more of a relationship or less. Basically, through the different traumas of their backstory, there were times where they were all fighting together as a unit, and then they all split off and kind of did their own thing for a long time, and then realized that they needed to come together again and sort of embrace the fact that like they're the only people who understand one another at all. They're the only people who have anything close to the same perspective, and so they almost inherently come together like a family unit. I don't know if I think they have the most amazing chemistry. Again, this movie is kind of a clusterfuck. But a lot of the lore is really interesting, and I still think it fits the found family theming of the season overall. I'm calling it a season now. Phase 4 is what I mean. WandaVision might be the most obvious found family example in that she found herself a family. She is somewhere in the recesses of her mind and through her powers and through some kind of multiverse dimensional stuff, according to Multiverse of Madness, she literally found a way to have a family after hers had been taken away and all opportunity for it had been taken away because she lost the person she loves. She lost this concept of a future that she had in her brain that she's trying to bring back through her powers, through both WandaVision and Multiverse of Madness. So that's a story of lost family, as a matter of fact, found and lost, and trying to get back and can't get back. And, meanwhile, Doctor Strange is trying to reclaim the opportunity of love and finding out there is universes where he did actually achieve it, where he did not have to be alone. Loki is more about love than family. I wouldn't really say that the Lokis come together as any kind of family unit by the end, but Loki does find that there is one person that he can truly be selfless for, and that is himself, but as a cute girl. It's just Sylvie. Loki has the ability to love in his heart because there's a version of himself that he trusts more than himself, I think. I think that's the best way to put it. So, Loki is more important for sci-fi reasons and setting up the future storyline of the MCU. It is kind of the bridge point into the multiversal era of this whole concept. It's where the timeline gets broken, where Kang starts showing up. So going into phase 5, like, this is the thing that's going to matter the most. But, the themes of love and discovery are still there. Marvel's What If is again less about found family. It's more about just a bunch of entertaining, crazy side stories now that the timeline is broken. But they do end up forming an Avengers out of characters who never would have come together normally. So at least in as much as Avengers was already a found family thing in a sense, this is. But that's the least of anything in this phase. I still haven't actually seen the Hawkeye show at all, but from what I've heard from Andy Signor, who I've talked to on a few live streams, it's about dads. He says that it's about the dad experience, the fatherhood experience. Hawkeye already had a family. He's somebody who can be a father figure to other characters who are lacking family. So I assume that's sort of the position it ends up being about dads in. But I think that obviously fits into these familial themes. And then you got Thor Love and Thunder, and this one's really the one that kind of beats you over the head with the point if you didn't get it already. The whole movie's about love. It's about Thor coming to understand that love is painful. You're gonna love someone just for them to die, but it's worth it. And really, he gets the lesson from Star-Lord. Star-Lord just kind of tells him this is the way you should look at it, and as he grows to look at it that way and accept things, he's able to let Jane go and and take hold of a child of his own and start his own family. So the found family thread really comes through almost most powerfully at the end, where the god of Asgard just adopts a villain's child to start family anew. And I would say it's a pretty good capstone on the themes of the whole thing. All of Marvel Phase 4 has had some kind of theme of coming together, finding love, finding a perfect match, finding a family, finding people who can be around you, bringing them all together and making something beautiful. And I think they did make something beautiful here. And I'm excited to see if She-Hulk will have any of these themes, if the ending of Ms. Marvel will contain more themes like this. Ms. Marvel has a lot of family in it, in that she lives with her family as a teenager. It's less of the found element. Moon Knight had more of a coming to terms with yourself inside your own mind, kind of like Loki. They're both about like self-love, but as represented through multiple selves. So, there's always some kind of tie-in of this romantic, this togetherness, this coming together element that these movies have. And I think it ties the whole thing together really well, and I wish more people had picked up on it, but hey, now maybe you will. Thanks again for watching. Look in the description for links to my hip-hop group Sucker Punch, to the other podcasts I do on the ASE Presents channel, to my patreon.com/goldenwitchfire, where for $5 or more, I will rant about whatever you want in a big live stream at the end of every month. Just DM me your rant requests, and also goldenwitch.substack.com is where I post my written content, bonus articles, and podcasts occasionally. Thanks again for watching, and never forget, Excelsior, Marvel Forever.